Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be looking at how to solve absolute value inequalities. So in the last section, 1.4, we talked about solving absolute value equations. Now we're going to take it to the next level and we're going to look at absolute value inequalities. Super similar to solving absolute value equations. So let's jump right in. There's really two types of inequalities you're going to run into. There's going to be less than or less than or equal to, like we have in blue here. And when we look at that type of inequality, if we can isolate, if we can get the absolute value by itself on one side of the equation, then we can split it into two different inequalities. And you can see that the blue one splits into two. Now, notice the very first inequality right here. This first inequality right here looks exactly the same as the original, except without the two bars. And the second one looks exactly the same as the original, except the sign has been switched. So notice that the arrow is pointing in the other direction. Okay, so instead of less than, it becomes greater than. And notice also that the right side switches its sign. So in this case, it becomes negative. So realize that that happens. Also notice this word right here. We're going to use and. Oh, I keep going back. We're going to use and to connect the two inequalities. So when we write our final answer, we'll have two inequalities connected with the word and that will be our solution or our answer. So how do we know to use this method to go by right here what's in blue? We look at this sign. Okay, if it's a less than or equal to sign, if it's pointing to the left, then we're going to use this blue method for solving our equations. So if I were you, I would write this into your notes because sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to remember. But if you have your notes to look back at, that's the best way to go. All right, let's look at the other case. And that is where we have greater than or equal to. So notice we're looking at this sign right here. If it's pointing to the right, or if it's greater than or equal to, then we are going to also split the equations, or I'm sorry, the inequalities. Notice that first equation there looks exactly the same as the original, not changing up a whole lot here. Looks exactly the same as the original, except without the absolute value bars. Notice also we're connecting with the word or this time. So we're not using the conjunction and like we did before, but we are using or. So notice that. Also, if we look at the other side, whoops. Try that again. All right, if we look at that other side over there, we switched the sign again. So we flipped the sign from what it was originally. So it was originally a greater than sign, and now we're making it a less than sign. And then also we negate the right side of the equation, opposite of the absolute value bars. So we'll make that side negative, just like we did with the absolute value equations. So it's exactly the same. The only thing we're adding in that's a little bit different is the or the and depend on whether or not the original is a greater than or a less than, which we'll have in our notes. And also, when we write our second equation now, we are flipping the sign here. So not only do we flip the other side of the equation or negate it or change the sign, but we're also flipping the direction of that arrow for our second equation. So keep those in mind. Last thing we want to look at in this video is some special cases. So remember in the last video, or when we were talking about equations, there was this special case when we said the absolute value of something equals a negative number. And remember that in that case, there was no solution. We said no solution because the absolute value of something can't be a negative. So we have something similar that happens when we have inequalities. So let's say, for example, we have this inequality. 5x plus 2 is let's say less than -3. All right, and this is supposed to be absolute value, sorry. The absolute value of 5x plus 2 is less than -3. Now, when you look at that negative sign there, absolute value of something less than a negative, that should put some there should be some alerts going off in your head right now, like sirens, whatever it is. This is another rule in math. Whenever we have the absolute value of something less than a negative, then the answer is there is no solution. No solution. All right. Anytime you have the absolute value on one side, a less than sign or a less than or equal to sign, and a negative number, no solution. But now here's where it changes up a little bit with inequalities. So let's say that instead of less than -3, our inequality said greater than or greater than or equal to -3. In this case, think about the wording. It's greater than -3. Well, all the numbers greater than -3 include all the positive numbers. And that's what we want with absolute values. We want all the positive numbers. So in this case, if we have a greater than sign or a greater than or equal to sign linked with a negative number, instead of no solution, the answer is going to be all real numbers. All real numbers. Because the absolute value of something is always going to be greater than a negative. It's always going to be greater than a negative. So because it's going to be a positive number. And every positive number I know is greater than every negative number I know. So anytime you have greater than hooked up with a negative, that's going to be all real numbers. Anytime you have a less than hooked up with a negative, that's going to be no solution. So just keep those special cases in mind. And when you see those negatives popping up like that, just remember, hey, something's going on here. It's either going to be no solution or all real numbers. But I hope that, and I'll move this out of the way because I feel like my face was in the way there. I hope this video helped you out, explained a little bit when it comes to solving absolute value inequalities. But anyway, that's all for me. Y'all have an awesome day. I'm going to put up another video probably tomorrow talking about some examples. We'll get some example problems. So after you watch this video, sign in and watch the next one. All right, I'll see y'all later. But peace out, guys.